Good branding takes a more complex logo and can simplify it further to be able to exist on its own. For example, Lillian's logo can be simplified to exist as a smaller icon, for example. We can then take this icon and create a background watermark to use as background for letterheads. This takes our finished logo and takes it to the next level of branding. Not only do we have a full logo, but we can also develop those little icons, illustrations, and what they say is brand assets that can be used on our website, letterheads, invoices, and little creative details and flair to help further communicate our style and personal preferences. Maybe there's a consistent texture that is used throughout all of your materials. There could even be a series of shapes or geometric shapes that are used as common supporting graphics to help to continue to elevate your brand theme across all channels. Are you a designer who focuses on icon design, for example? You could create an entire series of personal icons and create a pattern background for use on all materials, giving your brand a consistent matching feel. Once again, if you're hiring someone else to create this for you, make sure you share your thoughts and ideas with them on this. Just an example, if you're a photographer, maybe you can share your personal favorite photos and maybe they can create a background graphic to use as a branded asset. Your task is to create several branded assets you can use alongside your logo. This could be a background texture, separator bars, for example, or icons you can use. These assets will come in handy as we create your business cards and other branded materials in future lessons. You could start to incorporate some of those headline phrases we developed in the goals section of the class. Those headline phrases will be great for Instagram ads, the business cards we'll be creating together in the next lesson. And before we start creating a few example assets for our brand, Lillian Hernandez, I wanted to go over a few tips when creating your brand assets. Make sure there's a consistent theme throughout your logo and branded assets. This will make your brand cohesive and interesting. Notice similar color usage throughout these branded elements. Did you notice similar treatment to the style of typography as well? Make sure these asset elements are in separate files so you can use them independently for a multitude of situations. This may be more for those who hire someone to create their personal brands. You need to have all the icons as separate files, so in case you need to use one when creating another branded marketing material, you'll have all those assets in a nice, neat folder and ready to access. Don't be afraid to be creative. Remember, we're developing personal brands for creative freelancers. Be bold, find your style, and maximize it. This is the chance to be creative with branding. Not everyone gets this chance, as the only limits you set are the ones you set for yourself. So now we're going to create a branding standards manual for our freelancing company. Branding standards are a little bit different than inspiration boards. Branding standards, or sometimes they're called branding manuals or guides, outlines and overviews your entire brand. This helps to explain to others who may be creating assets for you how to use your brand assets and logo. It also explains and details your color palette and when to use certain colors. It will show the many different formats in which your logo can exist, including single color, full color, and other variations that might be used for different situations. It will also show what font choices are suitable for use when creating your branded materials, including a headline or a larger sized font, as well as what font to use for your smaller body copy. These also show any other branded assets like textures, patterns, icons, and more. I find great branding standards manuals include a few finished designs, including a business card or a social media post, just to show how these branded assets are being used and how to properly use them. I wanted to show you how messy it is to create all your brand assets and your logo design. So this was just the logo concept process, was really trying to find the right fonts and try to find the right font pairing. It took some time to figure out what colors I wanted to use as well. I tried out quite an array of different colors. I tried bright colors. I tried to bring out the colors from my inspiration board to try to pull things there. And so I kind of settled on that green teal color that I pulled from the inspiration board. But I started to develop icons and patterns, just having an area to play around with and really produce some ideas and concepts for my brand assets. So you can kind of see this kind of mess I created trying to think of maybe some icons that I thought really connected with what she does, which is a graphic designer. I just have some basic tools like layout, the pen tool, a little typography element there, like she works with type a lot, and also kind of a color wheel type area. So just kind of coming up with some generic icons. I did this all in Adobe Illustrator. Of course, you can use Affinity Designer. You can hire a designer. A lot of different ways you can approach this. But I thought I wanted to kind of show you a little bit of the mess that it took. I also made a pattern using the pattern tool in Adobe Illustrator to be able to create that pattern. I thought it would be great to have a really neat branded asset that I can put on backgrounds. And in this area, I was still trying to figure out how to best overlay that texture on top. And this was kind of what I came up with. I don't think in the end I ended up going with something a little bit more clean, but just some ideas that were running through my head. I wanted to kind of show you my raw process, because a lot of people, I know a lot of instructors just show the finished polished stuff, but I wanted to show you the messy stuff, because this is what it's like when you're creating brands. It gets messy. There's a lot of different versions and iterations you have to go through to find that final design. So this is kind of my rough play area where I'm figuring all this out. I'm going to take a lot of this and put it together in a really nice brand presentation, and we're going to be doing that with our brand manual, which is going to be right over here. So this is the brand manual that I settled with. You can kind of see how I have the color palette, I have the choices, I've found the inspiration there. I'm also including that as a part of my brand presentation. And we have a couple different versions of the logo like we talked about a little earlier. There's a single color version, and it can exist in a lot of different primary colors of the brand. So it can exist in the teal, it can exist as a watermark, which is kind of a lighter gray color. It can exist on the back of a letterhead. You could put this very easy to read, still text on top. So just kind of laying out the different arrangements of logos. And you know what happens is when you start to develop your website, your portfolio, your business cards, you'll start to use this logo and you might run into some limitations. And that's great, because you can always revisit your brand manual and add different versions of your logo. And so for example, when we create our profile or our online portfolio, we're going to have some limitations with a round seal logo, because they don't always fit nicely on a top of a website in the header area. So we're going to need to create a really simplified non-seal version of the logo so we can be able to have multiple applications of our logo. And that's going to be very common with almost any logo. Not every logo is going to fit perfectly in that one format. So we're going to be developing that a little bit later to make sure that we have a horizontal version of the logo so we can work in digital formats. So you can see kind of the iconography. Icons are not required. I just like to have them because, you know, it's kind of nice to have a series of icons. Just for this particular person, I found it to be nice. And also secondary colors, not required. What I did is I wanted to pull from my inspiration board some of those colors that I found that did not end up as primary colors. But I thought, what if for some reason those colors are not working out for that particular format or ad? You know, I don't want to be stuck with these cool colors when I really want to have a high impact color. And so that's why I chose some secondary colors that I thought were alternatives if I felt like a particular ad needed to be much more brighter and vibrant and eye-catching. And so just kind of developing a secondary color palette, and I have the hex codes underneath. Just so I can copy and paste those hex codes whenever I start to develop online assets. I can copy and paste, and I have a document I can go to and easily access that stuff. That can further expand on the brand assets, including the background texture I created. I'm going to create something subtle enough where I can put text on top and it doesn't fight with it too much. And also you want to lay out your typography plan or your font plan. So what type of fonts can you use? Is there multiple fonts that you can use in your brand? Is there one you use for headlines? And is there one that you use for secondary lines? Is there one you use for body copy if you have long blocks of copy? This is great for your digital website, but it's also great when we create your PDF portfolio and other kind of assets. We can kind of have this set up so you have kind of a font or typography plan. So you can literally copy and paste from this area. You can drag this over. You know what typeface it's going to be. This one's Benton Sans and this one's Commuter Sans Light. So I can already have that established. It's easy for me to go ahead and pick those as I start to develop the branded assets. And also application on darker backgrounds. It's always great to think about that. I go through that in a lot of my design courses when we're developing brands and logo designs, how important it is to have your logo be as flexible as possible. That means it needs to work on darker backgrounds. There's so many situations where you're on a social media site and they have a dark background and you're forced to use it. This is great to have that option. You're not limited. You're not stuck in a box with your logo design. Also, we have invoices. This is a great way to show kind of how our brand and brand manual can be applied to an actual product. So I decided to come up with a mock invoice. Of course, we're going to talk about invoicing software later in the class, and there's some limitations with what you can design on some of them. Some of them, like QuickBooks, is very flexible. You can design a really custom invoice, and some of them, like ZipBooks, which is a free invoicing tool, they'll allow you to change your header. They might allow you to put a logo, but they're not going to allow this kind of custom look. But I went ahead and kind of put one together just in case, and just to kind of help to practice brand extension and help to kind of show how do I handle type and text and layout. How do I use the texture? Are there any kind of things I can apply to other branded assets? So in this case, I have this kind of line system here where I was able to keep contact information. And what's great about developing this is once we develop a few items, so we're going to do a social media post and a business card next. Once you develop a few items, you can copy and paste a lot of those to keep the same look and consistency. So when you already develop a first one, I can copy and paste this little chunk of text and I can easily apply it to a business card. So here's the business card. I applied kind of the same information and kind of the same style with the lines. So we're just starting to develop that. You can't develop your entire branded campaign without having to do real projects. So sometimes you have to go back and revisit your brand, and that's okay. That's a very normal part of the branding process, is going back, maybe adding a new logo, a new style, maybe tweaking something, because when you start to apply it to other assets, it maybe didn't work. And so it's a back and forth creation process, and don't be afraid if you kind of messed up and said, ooh, my logo is not working well there. You can find a way to adapt it or have a different version that works on it. It's all part of the process.